Welcome to this lecture on new product development process. Developing a new biomedical product requires input and integrated interaction from many functional areas within a company. A structured process helps bring products from concept to market in an organized manner, ensuring everyone understands their roles and responsibilities. The NPD process ensures quality and safety while minimizing time, effort, and cost through systematic planning. Additionally, a defined process is required and reviewed by FDA in order to approve products. The agency expects documented evidence of systematic development. Beyond regulatory requirements, a structured NPD process provides a framework for organizational alignment, ensuring all functions work toward common goals with clear milestones and decision points. Biomedical product development proceeds through distinct phases that interconnect throughout the life cycle. Discovery and preclinical encompass in vitro studies, animal studies, and product design leading to the decision to advance to human testing. Clinical trials involve human studies through phase development, phase 1, 2, and 3, culminating in regulatory filings. Manufacturing, marketing and sales cover production, packaging, distribution, marketing strategy, and commercial sales activities. Lifecycle management addresses new forms, strengths, indications, and patent or exclusivity extensions to maximize product value over time. While these phases appear sequential, significant overlap and iteration occurs as development proceeds and market understanding evolves. Planning and preparing an NPD process requires several key inputs. Company strategy and business model provide context for how the product fits organizational goals. Market research defines opportunity size, competitive dynamics, and customer needs. Indication selection and lifecycle planning establish the scope of development activities. Process steps, milestones, timeline, and cost estimates structure the project plan. Unknown risks and uncertainties must be identified and planned for. Pricing and reimbursement issues influence development decisions and commercial viability. Regulatory options determine the approval pathway and requirements. All these inputs must be integrated into a coherent plan that guides development decisions while remaining flexible to new information. In biomedical products, market approval by FDA is defined by very specific language focused on the indications for which the product is approved. Clinical studies support these claims, demonstrating that the product performs as stated for the specific disease condition in the indication. FDA issues product labeling specifically defining the indications for use, and the manufacturer cannot promote outside the approved indications. This is a critical point. The NPD process begins with the selection of intended claims for the product. Indication selection drives clinical trial design, regulatory strategy, commercial positioning, and resource allocation. Endpoints must be carefully selected to demonstrate clinical benefit in ways FDA will accept as basis for approval. Having a list of identified risks and unknowns helps build an NPD process with greater chance of success. Typical known risks include toxicity issues, pharmacokinetic profile problems, efficacy and safety concerns, device instability, and specificity or sensitivity issues for diagnostics. Development uncertainty spans several categories. Resource uncertainty involves level of funding, appropriate team composition, and management oversight adequacy. Organizational uncertainty includes mergers and acquisitions, key sponsors leaving, and changes in strategic direction. Technical uncertainty is always present but can sometimes be addressed by competent technical staff. Market uncertainty encompasses competition, market dynamics, pricing and reimbursement, FDA policy, and legal issues. Companies have control over resource and organizational factors but less over technical and market factors. The stage gate process was developed in 1988 as a development process specifically suited for biomedical products to help address issues, risks, and uncertainty. It consists of defined activity stages with decision points between stages, the gates, representing the need for go/no-go decisions. The decision points are designed based on perceived risk level at that stage in the project, with risk defined by nature of the project and culture of the company. Stage gate provides a systematic way to evaluate progress and make informed decisions about continuing or terminating projects. This prevents continued investment in projects that are unlikely to succeed, freeing resources for more promising opportunities. The framework has been widely adopted across the biomedical products industry. Drug development typically starts with identification of an unmet medical need and discovery of a compound or class of compounds that in some way addresses this need. Target discovery analyzes the facet of disease pathology or pathway that can be blocked or modulated. This target of the drug then needs to be validated through preclinical experimentation. Once the target is validated and selected as the basis for treatment, chemical compound screening takes place, resulting in several hits that show activity against the target. Chemistry is then involved to optimize the various hits into lead compounds, with the goal of finding acceptable drug candidates that combine efficacy, safety, and favorable drug-like properties. Once chemistry has optimized compounds to lead candidates, full review of characteristics is carried out including pharmacological properties, stability, and manufacturability. Commercial evaluation assesses market potential and competitive positioning. The compound then enters formal toxicity testing, including testing on 2 different animal species to identify dosages at which toxic effects are seen. Specific tissue testing examines effects on various organ systems. Throughout preclinical development, manufacturing processes are established and product is produced for clinical trials. When sufficient preclinical evidence supports safety and potential efficacy, an investigational new drug application is submitted to FDA requesting initiation of testing in humans. The compound is typically locked at this point. Clinical development proceeds through 3 main phases. Phase 1 involves first human testing in normal, healthy patients to determine toxicity threshold and understand upper and lower bounds of dosing. Phase 2 represents dose-ranging studies to determine correct dose response in actual patients with the disease, focusing on both safety and efficacy in smaller numbers. The end of Phase 2 meeting with FDA is critical. Data determines whether to proceed with Phase 3, and Phase 3 protocols are discussed in detail. Phase 3 or pivotal trials verify efficacy in more extensive studies with much larger or special patient populations, with rigorous statistical analyses demonstrating efficacy and safety. The new drug application is then submitted to FDA with all clinical data and analyses. Medical device development follows a distinct process adapted to device characteristics. Product concepts usually come from an invention or discovery, or from an unmet medical need identified through market research that supports viability of the concept. Indications and mechanism of action are key factors to determine as they dictate development focus. A product design specification document is created detailing requirements. Typical steps include identifying the need, defining the problem, setting design objectives and constraints, searching for background information, conducting risk assessment, devising alternative solutions, and analyzing top solutions. Device prototypes are evaluated in animal models before production commences, with biocompatibility tests for toxicity, irritation, sensitization, and other factors. Device regulatory pathways vary by device classification and risk level. The investigational device exemption allows sponsors to pursue clinical studies in humans to collect efficacy and safety data supporting 510(k) or PMA applications. Prior to IDE submission, Pre-submission meetings with CDRH provide process understanding, guidance on complex issues, and faster processing. The 510(k) is a pre-market submission demonstrating the device is safe, effective, and substantially equivalent to a predicate device, little or no clinical data typically required. The PMA is a pre-market application based on scientific evidence of safety and efficacy for Class III medical devices, requiring clinical trials. The device classification determines which pathway applies and the extent of evidence required. Studies utilizing vertebrate animals require inclusion of an Animal Care and Use program submitted to the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee of the investigating entity for review and approval. The Animal Care program must meet certain requirements: minimum standards of care and treatment for all research animals, research facilities meeting standards for veterinary care, and pain and distress caused by research minimized as much as possible. These ethical requirements reflect both moral obligations and regulatory expectations. Comprehensive documentation of animal studies and welfare measures is required for regulatory submissions. Failure to meet IACUC requirements can result in study rejection and regulatory sanctions. Institutional Review Board review and approval is required by FDA for human studies. The purpose of the IRB is to assure the rights and welfare of study subjects participating in clinical trials. Key requirements include informed consent forms signed by subjects confirming they understand the risks involved in participation and verification that the sponsor has all necessary FDA permissions before studies proceed. IRB oversight continues throughout clinical studies, reviewing any protocol amendments, safety events, and study conduct. This ethical framework protects both individual participants and the integrity of clinical research. Failure to meet IRB requirements can invalidate study data for regulatory purposes. Project management is the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities in order to meet or exceed stakeholder needs and expectations. A project is defined work with agreed timelines, requiring a team with diverse skills to work together achieving common objectives. Biomedical product development, with its complex set of unique characteristics and requirements, has evolved to regular use of project teams to facilitate rational product development. Because input from many functional areas is needed throughout development, multidisciplinary teams carry out varied tasks. Level of engagement by any function varies with project stage. Team composition changes, but expect cyclicality as requirements evolve through lifecycle planning and enhancements. Project teams usually last a long time, placing significant emphasis on teamwork, coordination, cooperation, and communication. Teams consist of people from different traditional functional areas and function through influence management rather than direct authority. It is not unusual for issues to surface regarding competing priorities between functional management and project team management. Project staff must sometimes juggle both sets of responsibilities. The project manager role may change depending on project stage and which functional area is most important at that time, for example, shifting from R&D leadership to commercial leadership as products approach launch. Effective matrix management requires clear expectations, regular communication, and mechanisms for resolving priority conflicts. This week examined the new product development process that guides biomedical products from concept to market. A structured process is essential for success, ensuring quality and safety while minimizing time and cost. Development proceeds through distinct phases: discovery and preclinical, clinical trials, manufacturing and commercial, and life cycle management, with significant interconnection and iteration. The stage gate process manages risk through defined decision points that prevent continued investment in failing projects. Ethical requirements protect both animals and humans involved in research. Project management and matrix organization enable coordination across functional areas throughout development. Next week we examine FDA organization, mission, and regulatory pathways for drugs and devices.